Welcome to my online classroom. Today we're going to talk about interactive activities on Moodle like H5P, Matlab Grader, and VPL. Now we'll talk about H5P videos. So I've taken videos that I've uploaded to YouTube and I've brought them into eClass using the H5P framework. I've sped up the video so we can go through a bunch of examples, including, you'll see in a minute, true-false questions. So we can have true-false questions, we can have fill-in-the-blank questions as well. The fill-in-the-blank questions can be very strict in terms of spelling, or you can set it up so that capitalization is important or not important, or you can have a little bit of permissiveness in terms of spelling errors, like including S's or not. You can also have options where you can say, well, there's 3 or 4 different options for the fill-in-the-blank questions as well. So what's nice about this is that the students can try the questions over and over again until they get it right. And from a learning perspective, from a formative learning perspective, that's really important. When they want to check, they might not be sure. They can check to see if an answer is right. They have to fill it in, or they got to try at least, and they'll see that it's right or not, and they can try again afterwards. So this is really nice. I think the students really like using the system. It's got immediate feedback, which is really important for them. Meanwhile, we're getting the summation of grades being sort of tallied up, and then at the end, once, for instance, they finished the true-falses plus these drag the words questions, then they'll get a score at the very end when they submit their answers at the final page. Finally, they can check to see if they've completed using the completion toolbar, which I've added to my course, which you can see right here. So now we're going to take a look at H5P word search activities. This is from the student perspective, and this is just an activity that looks at practicing vocabulary with students. So if you want to introduce new terms, in this case we're looking at the Java programming language, so we're using Java programming language terms like Eclipse and JShell and system and method. These are just words that we would, but you could put in any word that you wanted related to the topic that you're teaching. Every time one of these word searches is generated, it's generated uniquely per student. So you have the same vocabulary, but each one looks different to each of the students. Now, I mentioned completion tracking before, and this is a super useful feature for students and for faculty. So here I'm going to switch to demo student, which is a fake student mode. And I can see that as a student, I've got this little bar right here that says if an activity is done, it's green. It's got a little green check mark. If it's not done, it'll have a blue bar. If I want to look at it again from the instructor perspective, I go back to instructor mode, and I go back to that completion progress bar, and I go to overview of students just below it. And here I'll get a list of all the students and which activities they've done. So I can see that first student right there had by the end of the semester has 86% of the work completed. That second student has 99% of it done. And we can see which of those things the student has or has not done, which is super useful. Now, this gives me sort of a student-by-student perspective, but I can go to a report setting in eClass, and I can take a look at a more detailed view from a class perspective. So I go to More right here. After I go into Settings, go to Reports, and then Activity Completion right there. And this will call up a different view, which some instructors will find a little bit more like the grade book and easier to read when they're trying to see what happens with the different students. And you can see once again here a list of the activities with the check marks showing where they've done it and a blank where the student hasn't done that particular work. Now, for those of you who want sort of a snapshot of this, you can download a CSV or an Excel kind of spreadsheet file as well to take a look. Now, we're going to take a look at one of 2 interactive programming exercise plugins for eClass. The first one is Matlab Grader. And from the student perspective, it's just another plugin. It's just another activity that's showing up on the eClass page. And here I'm going to switch to demo student. And you can see one of these Matlab Grader exercises. So this one is a simple programming problem, relatively speaking. And the idea is the student just has to print something in terms of a variable on the screen. Okay, so in this case, we're supposed to print out Matlab is awesome, and it's supposed to be assigned to something called a variable first car in this particular case. So I type it in. First car is equal to Matlab is awesome. I just sort of type it out like that. And then I'll be able to run it and check to see if it's right. So from a student perspective, this is really nice. They could be doing this one in the morning or on the weekends when the TAs aren't available, and they can get immediate feedback. So I go to run script right here, and I'll see if something comes out. And yeah, the output there is Matlab is awesome, fantastic. Now I'm going to submit it to see if it's actually right. Okay, so let's take a look right here. I go to the submit button at the bottom, like that, and so it'll run it on the server. So the student doesn't have to install anything, and it determines that there is, well, a problem, that it's got the wrong type. So it's supposed to be of type car, not of type string. And so there's some really nice built-in features right here to determine whether or not something is correct. So some good feedback for students. So I got to change that up. So instead of double quotes, I'll put single quotes like this. And I'm going to try it again. So again, the student can try this over and over until they get it right. So I run it one more time. And the output's good. I hit the submit button. And what do we get? Nope, I got it wrong again. So what could possibly be wrong here? Oh, maybe I spelled it wrong. Yeah, MATLAB's supposed to have capital letters in the name. Yeah, we can see it right there. So I'm going to change that up. And there we go. I change that up. I run the script. I make sure that it's okay. And then I'll submit it again. So let's take a look. Yeah, the output's good. Hit the submit to see if I'll get it graded. And 1, 2, 3. There we go. A little check mark right there. We got a good grade. So MATLAB Grader comes with a bunch of built-in, ready-to-go off-the-shelf examples. So here I'm going to add one in eClass using the MATLAB Grader plugin. I'm going to name it. That's one of the first things you got to do right here is you got to name it first. Then I'm going to set it up so that it has activity completion turned on, where the students get it complete if they get a grade that's assigned to them from MATLAB Grader. I'm going to assign a grade of 1 to each one of these exercises. And that's it. Now I go back to save and return to the course. And I can take a look at what this assignment is going to be by adding in the actual exercise now. So all I did was basically create a shell for it. Now I'm going to fill that shell. And I'm going to choose one of the grading MATLAB Grader exercises, the basic one, my first script problem. It's just a nice simple one. I add it in. I can't change it. It's just one of these off-the-shelf ones. I've set it up to not change it. I'd have to make a copy or use the draft version in order to change it. You can see in here there's the reference teacher solution as well as the student learner template that they get immediately, the students do. And so now it's filled that shell and everything's sort of built in. The template for the reference solution and for the student perspective as well. And now we're ready to try it out. Okay, so I'm going to click on the return back to the eClass page, that section on my eClass page right here, and I'm going to switch over to Demo Student. So I'm going to look at it from the student perspective. I'm going to scroll down to where that exercise is. I'm going to click on it. And now that I'm in the page, I can see all the instructions for it. I can see the learner template right here. And I'm going to add in the text that's required to solve the problem. And then I run the script like this. And this way I can see what the script actually does. And it says, well, the code ran without output. So generally, it's a good idea to have a little display right here to show what the answer is for the student. Okay, and so I'm going to run it, and it's 314.1593. Then I click on the Submit button to get it graded. And we'll see if, yep, it passes. There's a check mark. We're good to go. So Virtual Programming Lab, or VPL, is another programming problem grading system option for eClass as well. So here we're going to take a look at a really simple one that I worked on for the Java programming class. The instructions are on the page for the students. There's an image that I've added in to show the students what they should do. And then they go back in here, they click on the exercise itself, and they can download the template, use it in an editor, a programming editor like they normally would for general programming work, or they can use the Edit tab right here where the template has been populated. So here we can see this is a Java file, and we're going to run it. We're going to save it and then run it and see if it works. And it turns out that it's wrong. There's a failure in the code. So the program is shown to be wrong. Now I can go in and, well, I can try and get it graded. And we'll see that I'll get a grade of 0 on it. So again, it's a two-stage process just like it was with Matlab Grader. And so now let's try and do it right. So I'm going to uncomment line 21. I'm going to remove line 22. I'm going to save it. I'm going to run it with that rocket. And then I'll see that it worked. It worked right there. So it tested it, but it didn't submit it for grades. Now I'm going to submit it for grades using evaluation, using that check mark right there. And we should see that the grade turned to 1 from 0. So we also have an instructor view for setting up things in VPL. And so I'm going to turn editing on. We're going to take a look at an assignment that already exists just to speed things along. And so I'm going to go to that example that we had earlier for the student, the online Java exercise number 1. And you can see that there's an image that I provided to the students that show that something's supposed to be uncommented and then commented. And now I go into edit settings for it, and you can see the title of the exercise. You can see all the details in there. And we also have a grade assignment of 1 for each of these activities. And we have activity completion turned on as well, so students can know when they've completed, they can confirm they've completed something. So I'm going to go and take a look at the requested files in the setup. And this is the template that's provided to the students from the very beginning. This is what they can either download or they can edit directly in the VPL plugin. Now I'm going to go and take a look at the execution files. These are the ones that are used in the testing of the code. So there's the 4 VPL main files. There's the VPL run, which runs the student's file. And that's really the main one that they use to get started. That's the rocket icon. Okay, and so you can see here, these are the things that are being loaded for Java programs. I don't use the debug shell option here, but it's possible to use it. But the evaluate shell file is used for the scoring. It's used in conjunction with the main.java and mytest.java files in order to run the tests on the student's code. So you can see test 1 is right here, and this will assign a grade of 1 if the student is successful. And you'd have to change this if you wanted to have a grade of 5 or 50 or something like that instead. And for those of you who are familiar with Java, there's the JUnit test framework as well that's being used. And this allows for proper testing, unit testing within the Java sort of programming language. So assertion of true, assertion of false, etc., based on particular testing criteria for the student's code. And this has to be updated for each of the different assignments. So there you go. That gives an overview of how this is sort of set up for Java programming, but it could be Python, it could be C, it could be all sorts of other programming languages as well. That was a whirlwind tour of my online class where we used H5P interactive activities. We used Matlab Grader and Virtual Programming Lab for other interactive programming type activities. All of these provided immediate asynchronous feedback to the students. Combined with a completion tracker, I think all of this together led to some really good engagement with the students, and I think they really liked it this year.